I also wanted to talk just briefly this topic between grants and contracts. You heard our partners talk a lot about contracts. And we have done a lot of our work around contracts, and I just wanted to highlight for you the difference between grants and contracts. Grants are usually based upon those requests for proposals, the RFPs that I mentioned earlier, that I was signing up for the Foundation Center, for example, to receive notifications that there was an RFP. RFPs come with specific goals, and they're usually very competitive. So a funder will say, we want to address these 3 things, everybody submit your best ideas, and you're probably very familiar with the whole grant structure. It is highly structured. They have certain reporting requirements and so forth. But there's also usually quite a bit of support. So once you get your project rolling, the grantor sometimes will offer support to you to actually do the work. The other thing about grants is it's very typical to, they allow, usually they will say up to 10% for indirects. And we learned about this, thankfully, through the USBC brought this to our attention. And so this is something that we always pay attention to when we're writing our budgets for grants, that we allow for the indirects in our budgets up to the 10%. And that has been something that's been very important to us in building our savings, if you will, around those indirect costs. So we don't have a lot of time to go into that, but I do want to mention that. On the other side, we have contracts. So contracts is what Rachel and Warren and Mel were talking about. This is where there's work to be done, and they've identified your coalition as the perfect organization to do the work. And there's no RFP. Nobody else is competing for it. They're reaching out to you and say, would you do X, Y, Z? Or maybe you're suggesting, as I did with Warren's organization, we can do X, Y, Z for you and make the best use of your funding. And so this is usually based on relationships. It's where it's sometimes smaller amounts, although we've had some that have been larger. You don't have to wait for the RFP to come out, but you do have to be a little more aggressive, I guess, at identifying these opportunities for contracts. But they can be as big a part of your engine and building those gears as grants are. The things they have in common is obviously money. They both generate revenue and can be sources of funding. They both will have specific deliverables, either grant deliverables or in the contract. You heard Mel talk about we have a contract, and it spells out exactly what they expect from the KBC. You will attend X number of meetings and help with the toolkit, and we had X number of webinars that we were responsible for, and it was all spelled out. And we have reports that are due. The contracts usually less so, although in the case with our state agencies, absolutely they need their reports from us so that they can do their reports. And both of them are going to be time bound to a specific start and stop date. So I just wanted to mention the difference there. Okay, so contracts, just briefly what to look for, that scope of work. Who's going to do what and by when? That definitely needs to be spelled out, especially when it's come about from a very organic, collaborative kind of relationship, like in the case of with Oral Health Kansas. I had to kind of stop and say, wait a minute, we've met 3 times now. This is clearly taking a lot of my time. Can we just step back and outline exactly what you're expecting? How many more meetings? What do you expect from the KBC? And then we had to talk and negotiate with payment. And again, like Warren said, being realistic, what exactly do you need to do that work? And then something else to address is when the work is done, who owns the material? So in a perfect example is with the toolkit that we helped to create with the AAP, with Mel. They own the toolkit. Obviously, the toolkit is full of information that's available for free for everyone, but the actual toolkit in and of itself is housed on their website. Now, in the example with our 2-hour prenatal breastfeeding curriculum that we created under contract with Rachel's Bureau, we were very clear that we wanted both entities to own it. So we own it as well as Rachel's Bureau, which means that if we have entities, like we have hospitals, we have schools that will approach us and ask for a 2-hour prenatal curriculum, if they're within Kansas, we can share it directly with them because we're co-owners of that. So just make sure you think through that ahead of time. There's this great legal checklist from the USBC Power Tools that can tell you more about that. Here are some more resources from grant writing. There's been 2 power tools on Introduction to Proposal Writing, and the foundation also has a free kind of a course, a training that they offer, and you have to sign up for that, but it is free. So I just wanted to give a shout out for the Power Tools webinars on grant writing.